The director didn't raise his voice. He didn't shout. He didn't argue. He simply looked at me in front of the entire department and said something that made the room fall into a silence so heavy you could hear people breathing. You have 1 hour, gather everything and leave your desk. No warning. No private meeting. No explanation. Just one sentence that erased 27 years of my life in less than 10 seconds. I remember the way the room looked at that moment. Some people froze. Some looked down at their laptops. One woman slowly stopped writing in her notebook. But no one spoke. Not a single person. And as I stood there, holding the same report I had spent 3 weeks preparing for this meeting, one thought kept echoing in my mind. How can a lifetime of loyalty end in 1 hour? What happened next inside that office changed the course of my life forever. And the most surprising part, the man who fired me had no idea what was about to happen next. Welcome to my YouTube channel Whisper Stories, where silence speaks. My name is Addison, and I am 60 years old. At 60, a man believes he has already faced the sharpest edges of humiliation. You think you have learned how to stand steady when life shakes the ground beneath your feet. You believe that after decades of hard work, loyalty, and sacrifice, at least one place in the world will still recognize your worth. You believe respect is something that cannot disappear overnight. You are wrong. The morning my director said, "You have 1 hour, gather everything and leave your desk," my entire world collapsed in front of 20 silent coworkers. And the worst part was not losing the job. The worst part was the way everyone watched. The conference room smelled faintly of coffee and printer ink. It was a place where I had spent 27 years of my life attending meetings, presenting reports, and mentoring younger employees who now sat around that table. Some of them could not even look at me. Others stared at the table, as if my humiliation was something contagious. The director stood at the head of the table with his arms crossed. He was younger than my oldest son. 35 at most. A man who had joined the company just 2 years earlier and climbed quickly because he knew how to speak loudly and confidently in meetings. His name was Martin. And that morning, he had decided to make an example out of me. "You have 1 hour," he repeated coldly. "Gather everything and leave your desk." For a moment, I thought I had misunderstood. "Excuse me," I said quietly. The room felt suddenly very small. "You heard me," he said, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Your services are no longer required." A few people shifted in their seats. Someone coughed nervously. I felt 20 pairs of eyes on me. 27 years of loyalty reduced to a single sentence. I had joined the company when I was 33. Back then, the building was smaller, the staff younger, and the future felt wide open. I started as a junior analyst with a small desk near the back of the office and a determination to prove myself. Over the years, I stayed late when others went home. I trained new employees. I solved problems that others avoided. I watched directors come and go. I watched entire departments change. But through everything, I stayed. Because I believed loyalty mattered. Apparently, I was the only one. "Is there a reason for this?" I asked. Martin sighed dramatically, as if the question itself annoyed him. "You are no longer keeping up with the company's pace," he said. Some of the younger employees exchanged glances. I understood what he meant. Old, slow, replaceable. "It's time for fresh energy," he continued. "We need people who can adapt faster." His words echoed through the room like small explosions. Fresh energy. After 27 years, that was what I had become. A problem. I stood there for a moment, feeling something heavy settle inside my chest. Anger, maybe. Sadness, definitely. But mostly it was disappointment. Not because I was losing the job, but because of how easily they erased everything I had done. Then something unexpected happened. The quietest person in the room spoke. Her name was Emily. She had joined the company only 6 months earlier and sat at the far end of the table with a notebook in her lap. "Sir," she said carefully, "Mr. Addison trained half of this department." The room froze. Martin turned toward her slowly. "This discussion is not open for debate," he replied coldly. Emily lowered her eyes. "But I appreciated the effort. Even small kindness matters when the world turns its back on you." I looked around the room one last time. Some faces looked guilty. Others looked relieved. A few looked uncomfortable. But none of them spoke again. So I nodded. "Understood," I said calmly. And then I walked out. The walk back to my desk felt longer than it ever had before. Every step echoed in the quiet office. A few employees pretended to focus on their computers as I passed. Others watched openly. Humiliation has a strange sound. It is the silence of people who once respected you. When I reached my desk, I sat down slowly. 27 years of memories surrounded me. A framed photo of my wife. A coffee mug given to me by a colleague who retired 5 years earlier. A small plaque from the company celebrating my 20-year anniversary. I looked at it for a long moment. 20 years of dedication. Apparently worth 1 hour of packing. As I placed the plaque in a box, a young employee approached my desk. His name was Daniel. I had trained him 3 years earlier. He stood there awkwardly, shifting his weight. "Mr. Addison," he said quietly. "Yes. This isn't right." I smiled gently. "Life isn't always right," I replied. He looked angry. "They can't just do this." I shrugged. They already did. Within minutes, word had spread throughout the office. More employees began gathering nearby. Some offered quiet words of support. Others simply stood there, unsure what to say. But one person was missing. Martin, the man who had fired me so publicly, had already disappeared into his office. Leadership sometimes hides after creating damage. 30 minutes later, something unexpected happened. The company's senior partner walked into the office. His name was Mr. Reynolds. He rarely visited the department. But that morning, he walked in with a serious expression. "Why is everyone standing around?" he asked. No one answered. Finally, Daniel spoke. "Sir, Mr. Addison was just fired." Mr. Reynolds frowned. "Fired?" "Yes," Daniel said. "Director Martin told him to leave within the hour." Silence followed. Then Mr. Reynolds asked a simple question. "For what reason?" No one answered. Because no one knew. 10 minutes later, Martin's office door opened suddenly. His confident voice was gone. Instead, he looked pale. "Addison," he said awkwardly, "Mr. Reynolds would like to see you." I carried my half-filled box and followed him. Inside the office, Mr. Reynolds sat behind a large desk. He looked at the box in my hands. "You're leaving?" he asked. "That was the instruction," I replied calmly. He turned slowly toward Martin. "Did I authorize this termination?" Martin hesitated. "Well, not exactly." The silence in that room felt heavy enough to crush steel. Mr. Reynolds leaned forward. "Addison has been with this company longer than half our executives," he said quietly. Martin swallowed. I thought it was time for new energy. Mr. Reynolds stared at him for several seconds. Then he said something I will never forget. "Experience is not the enemy of progress, arrogance is." Martin was removed from his position that afternoon. But that is not the part of the story that stayed with me. The real lesson came later. Mr. Reynolds offered me my job back immediately. But I surprised him. I declined. He looked confused. "You've earned your place here," he said. I know, I replied. But today showed me something important. What is that? I smiled softly. A place that can forget 27 years of loyalty in 1 hour is not a place I want to spend the rest of my life. I left the building that day carrying a small box. But I also carried something more valuable. Freedom, respect for myself, and the understanding that sometimes the greatest dignity is walking away. Now, at 60 years old, I often tell this story to younger people. Because life will test you. Sometimes unfairly. Sometimes publicly. Sometimes in ways that make you question your own worth. But remember this. A job can fire you. A company can replace you. But your dignity is something only you can give away. Never surrender it. Not for a paycheck. Not for approval. Not even for 27 years of loyalty. Because the greatest lesson life taught me at 60 was simple. Respect yourself enough to walk away from places that forget your value.